Hello, my name is John Ash, and I work for K3 Integrations, a Ruby on Rails development company. And on this screencast, I'm going to show you how to build a simple blogging application. Okay, here's what our goal is. We're going to build a sample app that's a simple blogging system for multiple authors. So in general, we want users to be able to log in to manage their posts. The posts can belong to more than one category, so we'll have a category system as well. Posts can be entered early, but they only show up on the publish date. And this allows authors to add a bunch of posts up and have them slowly published. The home page will just show a list of all the posts, and then each post categories will link to a page showing only posts in that category. So we should be able to filter by category. And then we should be able to filter by user as well. So there'll be a user's page that only shows posts from a given user. Now the model for this application is fairly simple. We're going to have a user model, users. Each user is going to have a name, which is a string, and an email, which is a string. And each user is going to have many posts associated with them. This is an association that comes with Rails. And then we're going to have a post model. And the post has a title, which is a string, a body, which is text, a publish date, which is a date, of course. And each of these posts belongs to a user. So that's a one-to-many association from users to posts. And then the post has a many-to-many association to categories. Each category will have a name, of course. And then one post can have many categories, and one category can have many posts associated with them. Okay? So that's our goal, what we want to do. Now, in order to create the Rails app, there's a template here that we're going to use to help us generate the Rails app. Now, this template I found on the GitHub website, and you can go there and look it up. The web address is here. And this template allows us to get a jump start on creating a Rails app. So let's go and run it. And what's it telling us? It's telling us, first we need to install Rails itself. So let's gem install Rails. Now Rails is just a collection of Ruby gems that are work together to provide the framework for which we can build our interactive application. Now, in this case, it's going out and fetching the Ruby gems for Rails and also their dependencies. So it's going to run down this list and take a while. And we'll come back when it's done and see what it's made. Okay, now that Rails is done installing, let's run that template again. And see if we can build our new application called Gain Blog. Oh, and away it goes. Now it's going to ask us a bunch of questions, and we need to tell it what options we want. Now, do we want to use Haml instead of ERB? This is talking about the templating engine. And typically I would say yes, that I like to use Haml. It's much more concise, easy to read, and easy to write. But for clarity, because it looks more like HTML, I'm going to use ERB, so I'm going to say no here. I recommend later on you could repeat this process and run this demo again and say yes, use Haml. And that would be a good way to learn what Haml can do for you. So, would you like to use RSpec instead of test unit? Yes, we do use RSpec for testing, though we're not going to do much of that in this demo. Factory Girl, this is also for test fixtures. Yes, I prefer Factory Girl. Machinist, no. Would you like to use Cucumber for your BDD, behavior-driven development? Yes, we'll say cucumber, but once again, we're not going to do much of that in this demo. Would you like to use guard to automate your workflow? We're not really going to use that in this demo. How would you like to send email? Let's say by SMTP. And would you like to use device for authentication? This is our login system, so yes, we definitely do. Let's do it with a confirmable module, number 3. Would you like to manage authorization? This is with roles, with CanCan and Roll5 for sure. And which front-end framework would you like to use? Let's use Twitter Bootstrap with Sass. Sass is built into Rails, so that makes it easier. And which form gem would you like to use? This makes creating forms simpler. We'll use that a little bit later. Would you like to use Rails footnotes? It's slow. Well, no, not really, although at some point you might want to try that. Would you like to set a robots text file to ban spiders? No, we want spiders to come and visit us. Would you like to add will paginate for pagination? Once again, yes, although we're probably not going to use it much. The Ruby Racer JavaScript runtime. This is primarily for Linux, and if we're not going to use it, it can pull it in later if it needs it, so no. And now at this point, it's going to run. It has all of our choices for how we would like to proceed. It'll go ahead and install all the gems that it needs. You can see it installing gems here. Then once the gems are done installing, it's going to create a bunch of models, views, controllers, tests, CSS, and JavaScript, and all kinds of fancy things that we won't have to create by hand, which will be a real help. So we'll come back to this in a minute. Okay, it's all done generating now. It generated all kinds of stuff for us, and the list goes on and on. We'll scroll up and see some of it. There's views and models and tests and a database even. It generated a SQLite database, which this is using. So it even created some migrations. Now, migrations are a way of scripting database commands. So we can create tables and add indexes and add columns and all of that. So notice that here the migration that were done created us a database table called users and a database table called roles, and did a bunch of other things, but I just wanted to point that out. Now, actually, let's go and run the server and see what we actually got. So if we go over here and run Rails server, actually just Rails S would probably work good enough for us. So there's the server running, and go over here to our browser. Now it runs on localhost 3000, and there's our wonderful app that was auto-generated for us with a theme and everything else. By default on the home page, it just shows a list of users, and it went ahead and created 2 users for us. The first one is an admin, the second one is not, and gives us a sign-up form where we can register for an account. Let's go ahead and do that. So this is the sign-up registration form. So if we say user@example.com and give it an password and click sign up, it's going to give us an error saying this user has already been taken. This was one of the pre-created ones. The email address of the pre-created one. So this is good. We need this. We need it to tell us there's an error. So let's run this again. This time we'll say user 3 and give it a password and click sign up. Now we've signed up. It says a confirmation email has been sent. But where did that go? We're running in development mode here, development environment. You can see the new user account was created down here. But where is that? Well, if we actually go over here to the server and scroll up in the logs, you can see the web browser requesting lots of things. Here is the email right here. You can see it's to user 3 and with a subject confirmation instructions, and here's a link to click and everything. But wouldn't it be nice if whenever an email was sent in development mode, that it would actually pop it up in another web browser? Well, it turns out that's not that hard with an extra gem that we can use. So let's go try that out. If we come over here and we run, we'll start up our development environment, RubyMine. Here's our app. And one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to add a gem to the gem file. So we'll say gem, and then we'll say letter opener, that one. Yep. And then over here in the config, we need to configure our application to use that gem. So in the development environment, it says here, email delivery method. Instead of SMTP, we'll say letter opener. And now, do we want to perform deliveries? Yes. The answer is yes. Typically not, but in this case, it's just sending it to the web browser. So we'll say yes, we do. And we'll save it. And now we'll come back over here. And now that we've gone ahead and created this, let's go ahead and stop our web server, and we'll say bundle install. With our new gem, it'll make sure that it's added and configured, ready to use it. And you can see it right there, installing letter opener. Okay. Now that we have that installed, we'll say Rails S again. Run our Rails server. And now that we have it running, here we go. Bring it up over here and reload the page. Now, nothing obvious has changed, but let's try signing up again. This time I'll sign up with Josh. And type a password, click sign up. And look at that. We have a separate tab that opened up. That this is the email that would have gotten mailed, but in this case it just sent it to a separate tab. And we'll just go from there.
Now, notice here that we're logged in, but it's showing each of these users with a user path instead of a name. So if I go to edit my account, click here, edit account, notice the form has email, password, password confirmation, and current password to change it. But there's no field for my name. Well, let's go change that. If we go over here to our code, and we look, it's under the views, so it's app, views, device, which is the login system, and then registrations. You can see here that there's new, and so we should be able to just add one here. We'll say f.input name, and let's make it required. Now this is for new user signups, and this is this one here, so we'll copy this. Oops. Required is true, like that. Now this is for new user signups. Now we also want it for the editing my account. That was the actual one we were looking at. So there we go. Now we'll save it and go back over here. Reload the page. Well, look at that. And it shows a name field now. Now I can type a name, but notice that it says that the name is required, but it actually isn't. That's an optical illusion. We said to make it show as required here, but there's nothing actually forcing it to be entered. So in order to force a user to enter something, we're going to have to go change the model. Now the model is over here, and the user model, and so we'll add here to the model, we'll say validates presence of name. And there's already something, devise already requires that an email be added. So, alright, so now at this point, if we go back here, let's try submitting something here without a name and see what happens. We'll enter a password and the current password, that's just for safety, and click update. Oh, look at that, name can't be blank. So we'll put a name in here, John Ash, and enter our passwords again, and click update, and look at that, our name is updated. And so that's a good. Now if we log out and click for the new sign up form, notice now that it has name here and email and password. Oh, look at that. Did you notice the focus came here to email first? Let's see if we can fix that. Coming over here to the new, autofocus is true on email. Let's change that to autofocus is true on name. Okay? On the new and also on the edit. So, copy that. There we go. Now we'll try reloading the page here again. Oh, look at that. Now our name has the focus first. And let's, just for safety, let's check to see if we click sign up. Oh, look at that. It says name and email can't be blank, and password can't be blank either. Great. So we got that fixed. Okay, now we're going to add our models. Now, so far, our models only have the ability class, role class. Ability comes with CanCan, role comes with Rollify, and user comes with devise. And that works so far, but we don't have our posts and our categories. We need to go create those. So let's create those now. Now what we're going to do is we're going to generate a scaffold. A scaffold it generates models, views, and controllers all at once. For what you specify, we're going to generate a scaffold for a post, and the post class model is going to have these attributes: title, which is a string; body, which is text; publish date, which is date; and user ID, which is an integer. So let's run that now. And it's going to generate, and there it goes. So it generated a migration for us, the first one there, which will create the database table. It generated our model class, and some tests, and the controller, views, more tests, helpers, and even some assets. We have some CoffeeScript, JavaScript files, and SAS, CSS files. So now if we we'll do the same thing, only instead of for posts, we'll do it for categories. And in this case, what fields do we have for category? Well, that one's pretty simple. I think we just have a name, and that will be a string. Okay, now that we have that, let's run rake db migrate. We're going to run our migrations now to go ahead and create those tables. You can see it's creating them now. And now if we come over here and restart our web server, our Rails server, and we go and look, we should see over here posts. Well, look at that. There's a listing of posts now with an option to create a new one and some fields. Now this looks a little bit ugly, so we can do something about that. In order to do that, we need to install the Twitter Bootstrap Rails gem. So we'll come back over here, add a new gem file. As you can see, gems are really helpful. We added the letter opener last time, so gem. And this one is Twitter Bootstrap Rails. There we go. And now we'll install that. Actually, we'll here we go. And now there was a problem when we created the scaffold. It added an extra file we don't need. And so we'll go ahead and remove that file now. And then we'll run some commands which will make the web pages prettier. Now this is just using some code out there. So let's remove the extra CSS file we don't need. App assets, style sheets, scaffolds. We don't need that because it comes already. And then let's Rails. Alright, so we're going to theme the scaffold of posts. Alright, there we go. And categories. Now, notice what it's doing is changing the views and making the views look nicer, look like Twitter Bootstrap views. So if we go back over here and reload this page now, oh, that looks much nicer. Now we can change it some more, but that's good enough for now. So there's one other thing though. We need a many-to-many relationship between categories and posts. And in order to do that, we need to add one more table called categories underscore posts. So let's go do that now. If we say Rails generate, now in this case, we're just going to generate a migration directly. Okay. And there, that created a migration for us. And then back in the code editor, if we go and look at the DB migrations, there we go. Now notice we didn't tell it what all to do. So the migrations have an up and a down. That way you can migrate it up, which will perform an action like created a table, and migrate it down, which will do the reverse of it. You can also say define change instead of up and down. And what change does is it's smart enough to Rails itself. Will look at what you define and just do the reverse. So in this case, we'll say create table and create categories posts with an ID of false. We don't need an ID on it. And then we'll say key integer. So we have integer field that's category ID, and we'll have another integer field that's post ID. And let's add an index on there just to make it more efficient. And we'll say category ID, and we'll say post ID. There. Okay, done. Now that we've created that, let's run our migrations again. db migrate. That should create one more database table for us. All right, there we go. Okay, yeah, we have the database table now. Now let's go. We need to make sure that we get the appropriate fields in our posts and categories when we maintain them. So let's see, coming over here in the models, remember how we did that for the username? We can come over here to post, and we'll say validates presence of, and we'll say now what fields do we want to require the end user to add. I think we want title, and we want body, and we want publish date, and we want user ID. I think we want all of them. All of them are required fields. And let's see, when a person is entering a category, what fields are required? That would also be validates presence of name. So we'll just require the name in that case. Okay, now we need to add associations. Remember I mentioned this earlier. We'll have a has and belongs to many posts. Okay, so in this case, categories have a many-to-many relationship with posts, and posts, post belongs to user and has and belongs to many categories, like that. Okay, and then the user, of course, has many posts. All right, so how does this all look? If you actually go, let's see here, I think we'll show model dependency diagram. Can you see that? We have a user, and there's a bunch of extra fields here on the user. Those were added by device, and last sign in at, and last sign in IP, blah, blah. But the important thing to note here is that between users and posts, you have a one-to-many relationship. One user can have many posts, and posts can belong to only one user. And then between posts and categories, you have a many-to-many relationship. You have posts can belong to many categories, and a category can belong to many posts. And so, good. So I think we have the model pretty much all set up. Okay, at this point, let's experiment with the model a little bit in what's called the console. Rails comes with the ability to interact directly with the model using a command line interface. And so we'll try that now. If we type Rails console, or just Rails C, it'll bring it up. And this is an interactive shell where you can work with the console directly. So you can say, work with the model directly. You can say user.all, and that lists all the users that have been created. You can see the email address of the first user and all the rest of the users. And let's see, you can say user.first, that'll give you the first one, or user.last, that'll give you. You can also see the SQL statements that are being called here behind the scenes to do the database. Now, let's create some categories. We'll say category create, name, we'll give it a name of, what shall we call it? We'll say console category, something like that. Well, look, you can see there was a insert statement, insert into the database, and it created it for us. Notice it added a couple extra fields, created that, and updated that automatically. Rails does that for us. And we'll say category 2, and we'll do it again. So now we have two categories. So if we say category.all, you can see there the list of categories. Now at this point, we could let's create a post. Post. Well, in order to create a post, we're gonna need to know a user. So user.first. What's the user ID? That's a user ID of 1. So let's create a post that's owned by user 1. So we'll say post.create. And what shall we call it this time? We'll give it a title. And the title will be console post. Okay, that sounds like a good title, and a body. This post was created on the console. Sure, that'll work. And then what else shall we give it? Publish date. Oh, why don't we make that date.today? That's a Ruby command, and then we'll say user ID. So who owns this post? Well, we'll say it's the user ID of 1, which is the example user above. So we'll create it. Now you can see that it went ahead and created it. You can see the insert statement into the database. Now if we go back over to the website, and let's log in as that user at example.com. And now, what was the password? This user was automatically created. If we go over here, we can find out there's this seeds file. This is what's used to initially create the database. And if we look here, we can see that it's calling the same thing, creating users. The first user and the password is, hey, look at that, it tells us right there, please. Okay, so if we come back over here and we say please and sign in. Okay, now we've signed in. Now if we go over here to /posts, well, look at that. We see this console post that was created on the console, and we see it on the website as well. And we should be able to go to categories. And look at that. There's some categories there. Now we can edit these. Category. Okay, we can edit it just fine, or we can destroy it if we don't want it anymore. Are you sure? Yes. So, there we just destroyed one of them. And so that works. Now we're missing a few other things, but we're getting there. Okay, there's some things here that are still a problem that we need to fix. Notice here there's an admin link here at the top. And if we click it, it takes us to the users index. Now, we need to actually just change that. And we should probably add a few more links up here to manage, say, categories if a person is logged in as an administrator. So let's go do that now. Over here, now where would that be? That would be under views. There's these things called layouts. Now, layouts are the containing HTML. You can see here's the application layout. This is the default containing HTML that wraps most of the views in our application. You can see there's some dynamic things here. This is a template, HTML template. And there's the main guts of it gets rendered down here in this yield statement. Now notice it's rendering layout / navigation here. So navigation. Oh, there we go. Now there's some if statements here. If the user is signed in and the current user has the role admin, then link to the user's path. Why don't we rename this from admin to users like that? Okay. And I think that'll suit us fine. Then we need one more link. And this will be for, this is also if the current user is an admin, we'll only let the admin edit categories. And we'll link to the word categories, and we'll go to the categories path. Okay? And I think that should work for now. Oh, but, well, our indenting got messed up here. So let's put this back. There we go. That looks better. Now let's reload the page and see if we have it. Well, look at that. Users and categories. And if we go to categories, there we have it. Now, our home, click on game blog. We don't want a list of users on our home. So let's go change that. If we go over here, the routes really defines what URL goes to what part of your code. So we can see that here, routes. And so root to, and instead of home index, we're going to want to say posts index. Posts index. Okay. So when we call, when we go to the root, both for the authenticated user, someone that's logged in, as well as for non-logged in users, we want to go to the post. Now let's go and check that out. Click on there. Hey, look at that. Now we're going to the right place. When we first come to the website without anything else in the URL. And so now that that's done, let's create a, well, let's go up here to categories. And let's create a couple more categories. Something. Okay, that worked good. And then we'll go back here and create another one. And there. Okay, so there we go. Now if we go back to our home page, posts, let's create a new post here. A couple things to notice here. This is the new post form. Now, it asks us for a title, that's good. A body, a published date, and notice it automatically added a little date chooser for us. There's some gems that are available, or that you could add that would change the published date. And so if you don't like drop downs, we could add those, but
we'll save that for another day. And then user, in this case, the user is actually expecting a user ID. Now, I don't think we want to allow people to choose which user this post is going to be. We should automatically determine it for them and automatically set it to their current user ID. So we'll take that out. But what's missing here? We also need a list of categories. So we need to fix that as well. Why don't we go do that now? So if we come over here to views and posts, now which one would it be? Let's say a new post. Now if you look at this, it calls it's calling this partial, which is a partial view, and it's the form. So there it is. Now let's take out the user ID field and let's add an association field for categories. Association categories. And then why don't we add it as a list of checkboxes? Now, if we left that off, it would just have a multi-select list. So we'll reload the form. Oh no, it said, gave an error. Oh, check underscore boxes. There we go. Now let's try it again. Oh, there we go. Well, look at that. Okay, so no longer does it have a user field. And it has a list of checkboxes that we can select. This is multi-select. Now, yeah, so that gives us that. And we need to, there's still a problem though. When a new post is created, it's requiring a user ID. So we'll need to set that. So let's go and look at the controller. Now, in this controller, it's the post controller. There's different commands. Index, different methods. Index will get called when you're showing the index of the post. You can see the URL there. And then you have show, new, edit, create, update, and destroy. And so, what we want, new gets called when you're creating a new one. So if you look at this post -new, that's actually showing this input form. And when you submit the form, it calls create down here. So you see create will generate this post object. And what we want to do is just modify the post object. Post dot user ID equals current user dot ID. Yeah, there we go. The current user is something that Devise, our authentication system, always creates for us. Now, if a person is logged in, it'll be created. If a person is not logged in, the current user will be nil. It won't be set. And that could be a problem, but we're going to require login for adding posts. So let's add something and see what it says. So this is, well, let's call it cool post. This is, and we'll leave the published date. And those are nice categories. And we'll click create post. Oh,
now it's giving us an error. Can't mass assign protected attributes category IDs.
Rails has a mechanism to protect attributes from being mass assigned, as in a form submission like we have here. Looking at the post model, we can see that we got an error because we attempted to save category IDs to the model, but we haven't allowed the post model to accept them. Each model can have an attribute accessible declaration followed by a list of attributes. These are the attributes that are explicitly allowed to be mass assigned for that model.
And in this case, we need to add category IDs to the list. Actually, at the same time, we should remove user ID because we don't want people to be able to set user IDs from the form that gets submitted, even though we're not having that as part of the form. We don't want people to doctor the form and submit a user ID either. So, there. That should work. Let's reload the page and see what happens. Okay, good. Looks like it got created. And if we go back, we see our list of posts.
Alright, we're doing good here. The challenge that we have now, though, is that there's no protection in place here. Anyone can post anything at all. So if we log out here, we can still create a new post. You can see that here. Create a new post with a title and a body and a publish date, and we're logged out. So we need to fix that. Well, how can we do that? If we go over here to the code, we'll go to the post controller, and let's require authentication. So we'll say before filter, and then we'll say authenticate user. But we don't want to do it for every action. We just want to do it for actions that change the post. So we'll say accept index. Alright, so if you're logged in, if you're not logged in, you'll still be able to see the index list of all the posts. And so we'll take a look at it now. Over here. Reload, we're not logged in. Well, sure enough, we can still see the post. Now, we got some problems here. We can still see the actions. If we try to take an action like edit, it's going to say, oh, you've got to log in first. And that's not a big deal. We can do that. So, at this point, what about categories? What happens with categories? So, same problem with categories. We can create a new category here. Nobody logged in. And look at that. It created the category just fine. That's a problem. So we need to protect categories as well. Let's actually require that categories be an admin user. So let's see here. And we go back to the code. Go over here to the categories controller right there. And we'll do the same thing, but we'll do an extra step here. We'll say before filter, and then we'll say authenticate user. Authenticate user is an action from device, which does our login stuff. And we're not going to have any exceptions here. Alright, but now we need to protect this. Only admins can do this. How do we do that? Well, we can use CanCan, and CanCan provides an action called load and authorize resource. Now, what that's going to do is it's going to load all the resources, so these lines down below that load the resources will not be needed anymore because CanCan will do it. It'll both load it and authorize it to make sure that the person is allowed to authorize it. So we can get rid of all of these. And I think even this one, and even this one, there. I think that about does it all. Oh, even for destroy as well. All of these actions find the appropriate object to work on, but load and authorize resource will both find it and authorize to make sure that the person is allowed to edit that. Now, how does it know who's allowed to edit it? Well, over here there's an ability class. This is CanCan, provided by CanCan. And so you can see here that it first sets the user, and if this gets called whenever some actions are going to take place in the controller. And so here we define who can do what. Like, for example, if the user has a role of admin, then we're going to say that they can manage everything, manage all. Well, what else shall we say here? Well, let's say that everybody, no matter whether they're logged in or not, they can read post. So everyone can read posts. We don't care about them. But there are some actions that we only want logged in people to be able to do. So admins will be able to manage categories. The manage all means everything, so that includes categories. But some logged in people, non-admins, we want them to be able to create posts and update and destroy their own posts. So why don't we do that? We'll say unless user.new record. So unless the user is a new record, in other words, if they're logged in, then we'll say can create post. We'll allow them to create new posts. We'll say they can update post. We'll allow them to update posts, but only if it's their own. How do we do that? We'll say user ID. So if the user ID matches the given user that we're considering, then we'll allow them to update it. Or they can destroy a post, but only if it's their own. User ID. There, how about that? And then down at the end, we have... Now remember that an admin will be able to do everyone, not just their own, because this kind of overrules everything. So, now let's save that and see what happens. We'll go over here and reload the categories page. Oh, look at that. It says you need to sign in. You're not allowed to view categories anymore. So if we say user, an example, okay, this is the admin user. We'll log in with a password of please. I think that's what it was. Well, look at that. We're back to the categories page, which is where we were headed. And if we want to, we can destroy categories. Yep. And we can edit categories. Lovely stories here. And so it looks like everything's working fine. Now what if we log out? Well, actually, let's go back to our home page. Posts. Could I create looks like these were all created by admin. Okay, so let's log out here. Now let's log in, sign in as, we'll sign in as a regular user. Actually, oh, this is sign up. No, let's log in. Log in as, I think I had a user here, Josh, and the password. Sign in. Okay, I'm signed in successfully. Now I'm a mere mortal. I'm not an admin. You don't see that. You see there's no list of of categories up here. What if we bypass that and tried to go to the categories page itself? Oh, look at that. It says you are not authorized to access this page. So CanCan is protecting us. And we're not just protected cosmetically, we're actually protected at a deeper level. So that's good. And let's create a new post here. And we'll say, this is, well, what shall we call it? Cool blog. This is the coolest blog I've ever seen. And we'll leave the publish date and we'll put it under the lovely stories and create post. Alright, so you can see it. There's the cool blog. User ID is 4. That's who I'm logged in as. It automatically set that. And let's create one more new one. Alright, so there's that, and we'll put this under the category of something, and maybe the console category too, or something. Alright, so there's some more. Now, the post index page looks a little bit odd at the moment. Why don't we go and change that to make it look a little bit nicer, make it look a little more like a blog site. So we'll do that now. In order to do this, let's go take a look at the code. And let's see, this would be in the views, the index view for posts. You can see it's shown there. So right now it's shown as a table and with a bunch of options, showing the post title, looping over each of the posts, showing the title, the body, the publish date, the post user ID, all that. Let's change this a little bit. Let's go down here and we'll change all of this code. Delete it all and replace it with some new code. Now, what is this doing? Well, once again, we're looping through all the individual posts. And we're going to show the title in a H2 heading. We'll show the publish date. And we'll specify a format for the publish date. And we'll specify the author and the categories for the posts. And then we'll actually show the post body itself. And if the user is logged in, and they're either the admin role or the post belongs to them, then we'll give them edit rights, the link to editing or destroying this particular post. And then down here at the bottom, everyone that's logged in will get a link to create a new post. Oh, we need to add a conditional here. So, we'll say if current user, okay, so if the current user is logged in, then we'll show a new link. Okay, done. Let's go and see what it looks like if we reload the page. Well, look at that. Now this is starting to look more like a blog site. Here's our blog title, console post, authored by first user. Here's another. This is what actually, the first two are not mine, so I'm not allowed to edit them. And here's the categories that they belong to. And then the third and fourth one, those are mine, so I am allowed to edit them. And the categories they belong to. Now, and of course we can create a new post as well. So this is looking nicer, much nicer. Okay. Now at this point, why don't we make the author a link to a page that only filters by that author? And why don't we make the categories links to the page that will only filter by that category? So how would we do that? We come back over here, we can see that we're showing author here. So instead of just showing the name, let's create a link. We'll link to the name, and then what will we show? We'll say root path. We're going back to the root path, but this time we're going to pass a user and say post.user.id. So we're going to pass a user parameter, a filter parameter, and along with a user ID. And so let's do the same thing with categories here. Link to, and then the category name, and then we'll go back to the root path, and we'll say category cat, and we'll pass cat.id. There we go. Now we save it, come back and check it again. Reload. Okay, now we have links here. See this? You can see down here at the bottom of the page. This links to a user. If we click there, now it's not actually doing any filtering. It's just showing everything. Well, we're gonna have to go do that. So here's the category, same thing. Category 2, category 4. So this is working, except for it's actually not filtering. So let's go create the filters. Now we're gonna have to do that on the models. So it would be on the post model. Now you can see we've created 2 scopes here. The scopes by user ID and scope by category ID. Basically, given a user ID, we're going to scope or filter down our post to just post having the user ID of the given ID. And same with the categories, although categories are a little bit more complex. We're going to need to do a join with the categories table. And once we join the categories, then we'll just make sure that the categories ID is the given ID as well. Okay, so that's how that works. And then over here in the post controller, we've also added a couple lines. These, we changed the posts here because we wanted to order the post by the publish date, descending with the most recent post at the top. Okay, and then the next 2 lines, if we have a web parameter given of user, then what we're going to do is we're going to filter. We're going to call our scope and filter it by the user ID number that was given. And same with the categories. If we have a category ID that was presented, then we'll filter by that as well. So let's go and see how this actually works. Okay, here's our blog site. And if we click a user, say John Ash, alright, looks like we filtered by that user. Alright, let's click a category. Lovely stories here. Oh, no longer is it just by John Ash. You can see first user has their post there as well. And if you click up here on Game Blog, you see all of our posts, and you can see that it's ordered by date. In reverse chronological order. So that's good. Most recent at the top. Alright. So now having done this, let's do one more edit, and that is that let's create one more scope and basically require that everything have a published date prior to today. If the published date is in the future, then we don't want to show it. So this is probably our last thing that we're going to build on this. How are we going to do that? Well, once again, it's another scope. And we'll say scope. And then we'll say published. And we'll do another lambda. And we'll say where. And then we'll have a conditional here, and we'll say where publish date is less than or equal to something. And that something is date today. Now this where statement is a fragment of SQL. And so that's what it's doing. And so once we have that, now let's go and add to our post controller. Right now we have no limiting at all, so we'll say post dot, and then we'll add this right here, published dot order. All right. So in other words, right now we're going to show that it's published and show the order. Now, actually, what that'll do is make it so that all posts that show up have to be published. But for logged in users, we would like to show everything without limiting it to being the published ones. So why don't we change that? And we'll leave it like that, and we'll put a conditional here. We'll say posts equals posts dot published. Okay, we'll limit it to published only if current user dot. Only if there is no current user logged in. Okay. So now let's go and see if we can see this in action. Coming back here, let's create a new post. And we'll call this something in the future. Alright, so we'll make this something and create the, let's make it, and today's date is June 8th. So let's make this thing publish on June 10. Okay, so create the post. You can see 610. Now if we go back, we're logged in. So we see this post, something in the future, but we are logged in, and so we did expect to see it. However, if we log out, we expect that to disappear. And look at that. It did disappear, and all of our edit buttons disappeared because we're now logged out. And there's our finished product. We can click around and see our posts by people or by categories, different categories, all kinds of options, but not see posts that are in the future. This concludes our screencast. If you have any other questions or comments or would like to collaborate on some projects, we highly encourage you to get a hold of us. My name is John Ash. I work at k3integrations.com, and please get a hold of us and let's see if we can work together on some projects. Thanks for your time.